All right, we're recording now. Thanks everybody for showing up today. My name is Brian Davis with AccuPlan Benefit Services. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Kylie Hatch and Brian Netzel of Inspired Capital Partners, and we're going to talk about investing in non-performing notes in your IRA or 401k. A little housekeeping before we dive in. If anybody wants any questions, we do have a large audience today. Please write them in the chat box or in the question box, and we'll do our best to answer them. Due to the large amount of people we do have on the call, we had over 90 people register for the call. I know that Brian Netzel at Inspired Capital Partners is going to be taking those down and holding a call for expanded questions to be next week. So feel free to let us know what your questions are, and again, there's going to be a future forum for those of you that have more questions about the non-performing note space moving forward. So let's begin. Again, like I said, I'm Brian Davis with AccuPlan Benefit Services, and I'm very happy to be joined by Brian and Kylie of Inspired Capital Partners. They'll be joining in about 15 minutes, or if you guys, Kylie and Brian, want to say hi, you can. Otherwise,
hi everyone. Hello everybody.
All right. Well, I'll get going, and then after about 15 minutes, we'll let them speak about the non-performing notes, and we'll jump right in. A little disclaimer before I get going. I am AccuPlan. We're an affiliate. We don't endorse any products. All information is for educational purposes only. Before getting into any type of investment, please consult your financial professionals. Now that that's over, we talked a little bit about myself and AccuPlan. My name's Brian Davis with AccuPlan Benefit Services, and I kind of started from a different background. My parents are rice farmers up in Northern California, and I've always kind of got the entrepreneurial spirit going in me. And I went to college at UC Santa Barbara because, well, I don't always like driving in a tractor all day. And after I graduated from college in 2001, I moved down to San Diego and got into the real estate business. Doing loans was very big at the time, and the whole real estate market was booming. So I was into that, mostly in a builder division here in San Diego doing subprime loans. So in 2007, that all kind of died on the vine, so to speak, and I was out and about doing life insurance and health insurance for a year or two before stumbling upon the self-directed IRA business. And I had never even heard about it before. So what it is AccuPlan and we have our own custodian called American Estate and Trust, which allows us to hold alternative assets in people's IRAs. So things like notes, real estate, they're huge products that we're seeing in the market that the brokerage houses and insurance companies don't hold. So we do the administration and setup for those types of accounts. And I'll get a little further into that. So most of the traditional financial professionals that you meet with don't really know about this market. Attorneys and accountants, they might know a little bit about the self-directed IRA, but they probably don't know a whole lot. It deals with a different tax code than they're familiar to working with, and we'll talk about that in a second. Financial planners and brokerage houses, they specialize in securities, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, maybe some publicly traded REITs if you do want to get into some real estate. But they don't really offer the true variety of assets that the IRS has allowed since ERISA was written in 1974. And for those of you who don't know, ERISA was an act passed by Congress in the 1970s, 1974 to be exact, that kind of started the IRA programs we know today. And it said you had to have a custodian to hold all of your assets. Well, those traditional brokerage houses and insurance companies, they specialize in publicly traded assets. They don't deal with the quote-unquote alternative marketplace, which is what we specialize in. And we'll go into that here just a little bit further. So this is a few years old slide. As you can see, at the end of 2010, there was about $4.7 trillion in IRAs. That does not include pension plans, 401ks, 403bs. So just in the IRA alone, $4.7 trillion in cash. 98% of that is in a traditional IRA investment, so stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Essentially, it goes with the stock market. Less than 2% in an alternative asset. Well, the tide's changing. I've been in this business for 4 years now, and we're seeing this number grow from, here it says 2% to I believe it's closer to 4% now. And if those of you remember Mitt Romney running for president last year, when his financial statements came out, it came to light that he had a self-directed IRA worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million. So it really opened a lot of people's eyes as to what else you can do in your retirement account. What we see here at AccuPlan, the most assets we see are real estate, notes, which we're going to talk about today, and loans, and people investing in private companies. I'm sure a lot of you have seen those late night ads for TV for investing in gold with your IRA. I don't see that typical client so much, but that's something we can do as well. There's all types of investment items you can make in your IRA. Obviously, today we're going to talk about non-performing notes, but you can do tax liens, foreign land, oil and gas. The list goes on and on and on. The IRS has never put out a list of acceptable investments, just of things that you can't invest in. And they really only listed 2 things. And as this slide shows, it's life insurance contracts and what the IRS deems as a collectible. And this list right here are some of the main examples of collectibles: art collections, rug collections, anything illegal, alcohol, and there's even some exceptions to the precious metals. A lot of times, you'll also hear that S-Corp is not allowed in an IRA investment, and that's an S-Corp rule. That wasn't an IRA rule from the beginning, so S-Corps don't allow IRAs to be members, though you can loan money from your IRA to an S-Corp. So there's a different way to do just about anything in your IRA. The main thing you want to remember about your IRA is you don't want it to get involved in what's called a prohibited transaction. So besides those 2 things or 3 things that your IRA can't invest in, there's certain type of transactions your IRA can't get involved with. And it's when your IRA gets involved with what the IRS calls a disqualified person. So this is under Internal Revenue Code, or IRC, Section 4975. And anybody can Google this and look up the tax code. It's not that long. But this outlines the prohibited transactions for an IRA, as well as who's a disqualified person. And the key points you want to see here are the family members in lineal ascension and descension. So that would be yourself, your spouse, parents and grandparents, children and their spouses, and grandchildren and their spouses. So they can't have any personal benefit from the retirement plan, as well as corporations, partnerships, or trusts in which one of those people is the majority owner of. And there's some more specifics on this in the tax code, but this is the main thing you want to look at. And if you're in an employer-sponsored plan, the fiduciary of that plan would be your employer and not just yourself, so them as well. Again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to write them in the chat box or question box, and I'll do my best to answer them now, or we can get to them at the end of the presentation. So let's go through some examples here. And if your IRA gets caught by being in one of these prohibited transactions, the police on this is the IRS. If they were to audit you, look into your IRA, look into your IRA investments, this is what they could do to you. So if they see that your IRA has been involved in one of these transactions, they can disqualify that entire IRA that investment was with. So if you bought a property, for instance, and you paid your kids to paint property, and you even paid the market rate, well, that was considered a prohibited transaction because your kids are a disqualified person, and that could disqualify your whole IRA, which could be a huge taxable event. So that's what I'm here to help guide you with. So let's look at some examples here. Hopefully everybody remembers the game Deal or No Deal from TV from a few years back, but this worked a little bit better in a live presentation, but we'll try it here in a webinar. So your IRA, can it lend you $10,000, deal or no deal? The answer to this is no deal. That's simple. That's self-dealing as an example. Your IRA can't lend to you. Different than a 401k. 401ks can lend to plan participants, but IRAs fall under different rules. Well, what about your brother? Can your IRA lend your brother $10,000? The answer to this one is deal. He doesn't fall in that lineal ascension and descension. He's kind of side to side. So the IRS is deemed that those family members are okay, but the straight up and down is not. So these last two get a little tricky. What about your stepson? $10,000, deal or no deal. This one's deal. Apparently the blood relation plays a role in this. Again, I don't make these rules, I just try to help interpret them for people as best I can. Now here's another one here. Your daughter-in-law, $10,000, deal or no deal. This one is no deal. Your children and their spouses. So again, it can get a little tricky, and I always tell my clients if they have questions about what they're doing, run it by me. I'll answer it best I can, and if I can't answer it, I can at least provide them and their financial professionals the information on where to look it up and decide. The next concept here is, all right, I understand the self-directed IRA. How do I get started? Well, self-directed is really a marketing term, which means we allow a broader range of investments than your brokerage houses and insurance companies do. So we have traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, and even the individual 401k, which I'll touch on in just a minute. So if you have an existing IRA, we can do what's called a trustee-to-trustee transfer. So let's say you have a traditional IRA somewhere else. We'd open up a traditional IRA with our company. We would move all the funds to cash, we'll transfer the funds over, allowing you to direct your investments to anything allowable, just like notes, which we'll go into later. If your funds are in an old employer plan, like a 401k or 403b or 457, you want to tell your administrator to do a direct rollover. So essentially they make a check payable to the new IRA, and the funds go rollover, just like they would roll over if it was a brokerage house. If you're in an existing 401k plan or other qualified plan, you might have to ask your administrator if you're allowed to take what's called an in-service rollover to see if you're even allowed to move those funds over to any type of IRA, whether it be self-directed or a traditional brokerage house account. And then last but not least, people can make their annual contributions to the plan. Most people fall under these first two models here of a traditional and a Roth IRA. A traditional IRA works very similarly as most 401k plans in, is it's a pre-tax plan. So you're able to write off your contribution to it, and then it grows tax deferred. When you pull those funds out at retirement, you're going to pay taxes on that as earned income. The Roth IRA works a little different, where you're not able to make a write-off when making the contribution to the plan. It's after tax, but it grows tax-free. So when you pull those funds out at retirement, you're able to not have to pay taxes on those. So if you have an investment like a non-performing notes, where I'm excited to hear Kylie and Brian talk about the amount of growth that's available in these types of investments can be large. So looking into a Roth IRA is could be potentially a great idea for you. Another IRA that's very popular is a SEP IRA. It's a self-employed pension. This works very similarly to a traditional IRA. It's pre-tax. This is for the self-employed individual and perhaps his employees if he or she has any. They can write off up to 25% of their gross income with a cap at $51,000 a year. Again, it's pre-tax, and it can be moved to a Roth if people do pay a tax consequence. Simple IRAs, I don't see as much. It works very similarly to a 401k, but it falls under the IRA rules, where a small business can set up this plan. Their employees can make contributions, from their pay, and the company can match just a little bit. You see the contribution limits aren't near as high as a 401k, which we have what's called an individual K, or you hear what's called a solo K. And I'll get into that in a second, but this is for the self-employed individual with no W-2 employee. So this allows a person who's self-employed to make contributions as both employee and employer. So it gets a lot easier to contribute up to that $51,000. And there's also a part of this that's a Roth deferral, where you as the employee can defer some of those contributions as Roth, so you can grow your after-tax retirement funds bigger. And I'll jump into a little bit more of the individual 401k in a second. So one thing I do want to talk about is we are going to be talking about notes for different types of investment strategies. And one of the big ones that falls into the non-performing note world is having checkbook control with your IRA. And there's really been one popular option here traditionally, which would be the LLC method. So this is what you hear about when you hear about the checkbook IRA. Your IRA creates an LLC that the IRA owns, and the IRA owner becomes an unpaid manager of that. So the LLC gets its own tax ID number and can get its own bank account so you can have checkbook control. If it's a single member entity, meaning just one IRA owns it, it's a federal pass-through entity, so it doesn't have to pay a federal tax return, but the state you're in is going to require that you pay some state taxes to them. And I'm in California, so California, I know you have to pay $800 a year and a gross receipts tax. This has some asset protection. It's a bit of a formal structure. And we have a product called the ICO here at AccuPlan that can help people with this as well. Another new prevailing kind of option that we've been seeing is a trust. And the method that I'm going to talk about today is a business trust. Very similar setup to the LLC. You have checkbook control because you get your own tax ID number. You can make direct investments. But just like the LLC, if it's one IRA being the beneficiary owner, it's a pass-through entity. But because it's a federal entity, a trust, as opposed to an LLC, which is a state entity, there's no state taxes to worry about here. And it can provide a little more privacy with less public disclosure. So if anybody has questions on that, they can check out retirementcheckbook.com or let me know a little bit more about it. So I'm going to move on a little bit. We've touched on the self-directed 401k. It's very simple. We have these plans. They're self-trust deed plans. So they kind of come with checkbook control in place. So you can invest directly from your own 401k into an investment. Or a lot of people still do create a holding company to be an in-between spot there. And it's real simple to set up. Even if you're not incorporated, you could do this as a sole prop, but if you want to incorporate, you can. Create the 401k, you adopt it to your plan. You can roll over any type of pre-tax retirement fund and then direct your investment from there. The 401k allows you to loan yourself funds out of it, up to $50,000 as a plan participant. So that's a benefit over the IRA. If you're using leverage in real estate, which we're not talking about today, it's a little added benefit there. And again, I've already gone over some of the other members, other aspects already. Most folks fall into the self-directed IRA boat. They open up an account with us, which we can get open in 10 minutes. They work on funding the account via the 3 methods we talked about. That can take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. So if you have some investments in mind, you want to start the process a little bit early to get those funds coming over. And then you direct the investment, whether you're investing directly into the asset like the note, and then send us a direction letter and we can fund that within 1 to 2 days. Again, IRAs can hold all different types of investments, and I'm really excited to talk to Kylie and Brian about notes. I got to know Kylie recently, just a few months ago at a seminar that we were attending. Found out he's working, one of his partners is somebody I've known here in San Diego for a couple years. And the non-performing note side is really growing right now, and a lot of people are making a lot of money. My personal IRA investments, I've traditionally done some trust deed investments, and I'm really looking into this market and hoping to learn a lot here from Brian and Kylie. So again, if anybody has any questions, please fill them in the chat box or in the question box, and I'll get to them best I can. And for now, I'm going to move it over. Will I be moving this over to Brian or Kylie first?
Brian.
All right. All right, guys. So Kylie had a question. Is there a 20% manager of LLC? All right, I can see your screen fine. Are you there, Brian?
I am here.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions for you?
No, not right now that I see. And if people do, like I said, please put them in the, wait, I think I got one here. All right. Oh, I don't know how to make this bigger. Okay. I know there are restrictions when buying a house with an IRA. Cannot mow the lawn, et cetera. What are the restrictions on notes? Can we contact the borrower to see if they will make payments? All right. So the restrictions are, would you be doing anything that the IRS could deem as a benefit to your IRA, whether you were paying the, it would be more than an annual contribution to the plan. So generally you want to hire third parties to do any type of work, like going to the property, but it's one of those kind of gray areas. Contacting the borrower, that sounds fine in my mind, but it really depends on how often you're going to be doing that. But I think that should be acceptable. So if everybody heard that question.
Okay.
And I'll
talk about that too. We have a different angle on that in terms of IRA versus a servicing standpoint. I'm hearing an echo in the line. You guys hearing an echo?
I am. Let me try to mute myself and talk again for a second.
Okay.
Well, my name is Brian Netzel, and I'm also with Kylie Hatch. And this is called Growing Your Retirement and Net Worth with Notes in Your IRA. We are both managing members of the Inspired Capital Partners hedge fund, and we are investing in distressed assets, and we'll tell you more about that as we go along. You can still hear the echo.
I'm hearing it too, and we didn't have it before, so I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Right. So let me make sure it's not. Let's see, maybe it was me. Okay, can we hear an echo now? You guys hear me?
That's better, Brian.
Yep, I think it was me. I was the culprit. Okay, well, I'm glad we found out. All right, excellent. So let's dive in. And I'm Brian, guy on the bottom, Brian Netzel, and Kylie's at the top. And we have in our team we added this up, 140 years of experience. Pretty amazing. I am a retired school teacher, actually. I retired 2 years. I went full-time into real estate. And I was schooled in the idea that if I worked hard, I got a good education, I saved my money, then I would provide for myself a great future. Well, I have 2 master's degrees, and as they say, I was going broke by degrees, right? Because the more you pay in education, the more money you spend, right? And the more educated you are, but doesn't necessarily equal greater financial success. And so 2 years ago, after working in real estate as a hobby really over the summers, I went full-time because I saw that there was so much opportunity in the distressed assets in the market. And I saw a need to build assets, not just work for somebody else. I wanted to take control of my destiny. And so that's in large measure why I'm here, is because of that. And Kylie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I kind of went down the same path as Brian. Went to college, got a degree in zoology and chemistry, and worked in wastewater management for 15 years. And in that period of time, we was doing some investing on the side, mostly in raw land and oil and gas development, sand and gravel, that kind of stuff. And then somebody told me that I knew more than they did when they were my real estate agent, and that I should get my license. And so I did that, and got it in 2007, which everybody knows the market took a dive right about that time. So I went back to the investing side, figured that things were much better there than it was being a real estate agent. And so just been moving forward from that. Spent a lot of time studying more in the real estate investing world, learning more and more all the time. Met up with Brian and the rest of our team a couple of years ago, getting into private lending back when that was a little bit more of a hot commodity, and we were doing a lot crossing together, and then we decided to come together as a team and put together our fund and move forward that way. It's a lot faster, easier transaction for us to do business in.
Well, very true, Kylie. And we're going to talk about how that transition happened, because as real estate investors, we have to be flexible. We have to constantly be evolving, and when one technique or strategy doesn't work, we have to see what's the smartest, best thing to do right now, and so we'll talk about that. So who are you as an audience? Well, you're busy. I'm surprised you're on this call right now. You somehow have gotten away from your boss or your business, and I would really suggest that this is going to be a very, very high content. There's no sales here. This is all content, and this is going to be fast-paced. So I would recommend closing down other windows on your computer, lock the door, really try to focus, because we're going to cover a lot. We will have a question and answer time a week from today that Brian Davis mentioned, which will give you a chance to go in deeper. You know that webinars don't make you rich. You may have been to a lot of webinars. You feel kind of overwhelmed with all the different options out there. What should I do? Maybe your money's sitting in your IRA account. You wish that there was something that you understood so that you could dive in. And you also want personal attention, and that's something that we as a fund really are focused on, is our people. And your goals drive your investments. You're not just interested in any old thing. You have specific reasons why you invest, and you want to know that if our notes going to be part of that. And you want to take action, but you want to make smart decisions. And that's why we're here, to see if this is something that maybe you would consider would meet your goals. And we think it's smart, but I'm going to let you be the judge of that. So who are we? We help you make smart investment decisions to maximize your returns in today's market. And as Kylie mentioned, we've been convinced that this is very, very strategic, market-sensitive information we're going to give you today. A lot of people don't know this information, and it really works. So here's our legal disclaimer. We're not financial advisors, accountants, or attorneys. We're not offering shares or securities. This webinar is for the purpose of educating the public about how they may choose to invest themselves. So what are you going to learn? Well, you're going to learn 2 timely investment strategies for today's real estate market. We're going to cover rehab lending, just briefly, but we will cover that in the non-performing notes. We're going to show you the advantage of paper over property. We're going to show you what the smart money is doing today, and we're going to show you how we manage our risk while maximizing our profits. We're going to show you 5 profitable workout strategies that you can use with notes in your IRA that are all good, as we say. And we're going to show you that there's even a need for seller-financed REOs in the industry. We're going to show you where we're investing and why. We're going to give you some case study highlights, and then hopefully at the end have some time for Q&A. So first of all, I want to show you the contrast between being a landlord and being a note holder. Very important distinctions here. If you're a landlord, a lot of people like having rental property. Nothing wrong with it. We've all had them. And a landlord receives rental income after the bank, property manager, after the taxes are paid, and after the insurance is paid. What does a note holder get? A note holder gets paid a steady amount, and then they get fees if they're late. So this is the advantage of being the bank over being a property owner. As a landlord, you're responsible for tenants, toilets, and other headaches. And as a note holder, after you buy it, of course, we call it a note holder, you're responsible for, not for the home. The owner is responsible for the home. As a landlord, they risk losing the home if they can't pay, and their credit is at risk as well. Well, as a note holder, you can actually foreclose and take the asset back if you're not paid. As a landlord, you're responsible for damage. You're actually also responsible for things that happen on your property as accidents. Well, as a note holder, you're actually insured as a loss payee if something happens to that property. And as a landlord, you're really last to get paid when you resell the property, whereas as a note holder, you're typically in the safest position because you're actually ahead of the owner of the house on which you hold that note. Their equity is your protection, and so you're really in a safer position really than the homeowner. So for all these reasons, we absolutely love being the bank. It's a big paradigm shift for a lot of people. It's one that we really value. And Kylie, why don't you chime in here, and what do you think about this distinction, and what do you see as the advantage of being the bank versus a property owner?
Well, being on both sides over the periods of the years investing, it's much better being on the lending side, you know, holding the note on a property. I had, as an example, a commercial property that we owned, an apartment building, and we were making all the payments. Everything was good, and Wells Fargo decided they didn't want to renew our loan and called the note due, and I ended up having to come up with $400,000 within a matter of 6 months to pay that loan off. And you know, they controlled the whole transaction and everything that went on with it, compared to as the landlord, all I got to do was try to figure out how to deal with the issues and all the tenant headaches and property managers and managing everybody else. Where on the loans that we've done and the notes, it's simply we turn it over to our servicing company. They do all of the main work for us and just send us checks. So once we figure out which notes we're buying and do our evaluation at that point, our job's pretty easy. So it's a lot less headaches and hassles than being the actual landlord.
Yeah, excellent. Great example. Thank you for that. Well, I wanted to show you guys this visual because for those of you who have been a lender already, and many of you have, you've invested in maybe a rehab project or something, you have created a mortgage, all right? So that's why the arrow is headed this direction. You've been on the front side of the origination through a broker, I know, but still you created a mortgage. Well, how is it different than a note investor? Well, note investor buys a mortgage after someone else created it, all right? So if you've been a lender before, this business that we're talking about today is really just the opposite end. It's like you went through a door and you're just looking back at the mortgage from the other side. So it's very similar. It's really not that hard to transition. A lot of the terms are the same, concepts, how to reduce risk is the same. In many cases, if you've been a lender before, being a note investor is not that much of a move for you. But I do want to talk about the difference between lending versus NPN, which we use as an acronym, which stands for non-performing notes. So lending on fix and flips, as an example, you're creating a loan. You are getting a steady monthly interest rate. We'll show you how these are different than NPNs. The known exit strategy is the payoff when the loan is repaid. You get a better upfront inspection. You get to have someone walk through the property. It's a non-owner occupied loan. That's the only kind we like to do, and you have a quick foreclosure typically, especially if you're in a non-judicial state. You have protective equity, making sure you keep your LTVs down. You outsource your processes. Of course, if you use builder's control, of course, to oversee the project and so on. You have a broker, a servicing company. A lot of things are outsourced. And typically it's short-term. That's the only kind of loan we like to do, short-term. And then your managed risk, again, the way you manage risk is to keep your LTV low. Well, how does that contrast from NPNs? Well, for NPNs, you want to get a discount when you buy a distressed note. There's no initial payment stream, all right? That loan has to be worked. There has to be a loan modification, or we have to get a deed in lieu. I'll show you the different exit strategies. But initially, there isn't a payment stream. There are multiple exit strategies, and I'll show you 5 that we're going to be introduced to you today. You can't enter the property. That is a disadvantage. You have to have someone go over and look at it. Oftentimes what is outside is inside, but there's some little tricks we use to find out what's on the inside, but typically you can't do as thorough of an inspection as you would if you were lending on a rehab project. You have to watch out for borrower protection laws as well under RESPA, and we can cover that more in a future video. But there are ways of complying with those that are not that difficult, actually. Now, typically, the loan is underwater, and that's actually good for you because that means you can collect a lot more money. It's an outsourced process, so you hire a servicer, you can hire real estate agents, whatever you need to help you. And then there are multiple time frames. It's not typically just 12 months or less. In notes, it may go from 3 months, it may go out to 18 months in some of the judicial states. So you have to kind of buy where you're comfortable. And then I would tell you right now, Kylie and I are convinced the market opportunity is now for non-performing notes. And I'll show you why that's true. Now for asset-based lending, this is how it works. Typically, if you have, say, a $500,000 house in, say, in Orange County, we would only want to lend up to 65% of the value of the after repair value of that home. And so we have that protective equity, we call it, as a cushion just in case the project fails. Maybe the rehabber flies off to Australia, doesn't want to finish the project. Well, we can foreclose and sell it. So that equity is very important. And to manage risk in rehab lending, you want to make sure that you have the property valued by an appraiser. You want to make sure that you have loan brokers to transact. You want to make sure that it passes the takeover rehab test, meaning you have that cushion of equity. You want to make sure that the construction draws are released only as the equity of that property advances. And you want to make sure that you work with someone who's done dozens of deals, if possible, or the rehabber has done the same. And you want to make sure that you have good relationships with first possession lenders because they can actually send you deals. And then take a look at the market cycle, make sure that you're in a market that's going up, and so that if something does happen, you can resell it, and making sure that the rehabber is going to be able to sell it for a higher price point than instead of it going the opposite direction. And making sure that you're loaning at no more than 65 or 70% of the fair market value after repairs, like we said, up to 12 months. And we typically like to do second deeds of trust and making sure that we're getting at least 8% or more. And then always non-owner occupied. Never do owner occupied. All the lending laws are stacked against you to those. And the people in our team have been doing Southern California, but wherever you live, you can do these loans. Well, now I'm going to show you that this model of asset-based lending, it sounds really good. It sounds really good. And if a rehabber can find a discounted property and is willing to pay you a nice interest rate or even share equity with you on the upside, well, it works. You need these three things, though. Discounted property, you need a willing borrower who will pay you a good interest rate or even equity, and then you need either your own money or you need a partner, a money partner who can provide that. Well, what happens if the rehabbers can't find any discounted property? This is happening right now all over the country. If a lot of you guys are from California, we think that our market is the only one where people are running to put in multiple offers on properties. It's not true. It's happening all over the country. The inventories are squeezed down to historically low levels. And so what happens? Well, the borrower cannot find a discounted property. And so you cannot lend anything. So this whole model of asset-based lending right now has been greatly compromised by the decrease in the inventories of discounted properties. And I'll show you more about why right here. See, in the past, this chart was just the opposite. REOs were in great supply just even a couple of years ago. There were lots of REOs. And then we started hearing all these rumors about, oh, the shadow inventory is going to come. Well, it never came. Did you guys hear that, Brian, Kylie? Remember those news stories about the shadow inventory?
Yeah. All these other REOs going to be hitting the market.
Yeah. And it's kind of like when I was a kid, you know, some people used to say, well, when my ship comes in, remember that? Well, when the REOs come in. Well, they never came in, and the reason is because the banks have chosen not to take the foreclosed properties to REO status. I'm going to say that again. The banks have chosen not to take the foreclosed homes to REO status. That means they have not taken it to the trustee sale. They have not allowed someone to bid on that property and buy it, okay? And they haven't taken it back themselves. Instead, what they've done is they have said, let's sell the note. And in other webinars that I've done, I've shown the reason for that is that it costs them too much to foreclose. It costs them on average $25,000 to foreclose on a property nationwide. That's a nationwide average. And a lot of homes aren't worth it. So instead what they've done is they've just said sell the note. So right now there are 11 million notes. This is not dollars here, you guys. This is notes. Imagine the quantity of money that represents. Here's a chart from DataQuick, very recent information about the median prices of homes going up. This is just here in California. Look at the increase. Homes are going up, skyrocketing in price, and the reason is because the inventories are down. You can see the sales volume has decreased, and compare that to the price increase. It's amazing. It is crazy out there what people are paying for properties right now, and investors are really risking their dollar by paying too much, and they say, oh, I'll pay this because in 5 years it'll appreciate. Well, that's called speculation. Kylie and I, we don't believe in speculation. So what are people paying? Yeah, exactly. Everybody has. People get caught up into it. Well, right now, the sources for discounted deals, how much is someone paying for an REO right now? Well, the national average, they're paying 79% of market value of the home. That's okay. How much are people paying for short sales? Average, national average, 87%. How much are they paying at the trustee sale? 90%. Imagine, you can't even go in to see the inside of the property. They're paying 90%. And off the MLS, I mean, 100% plus, right, for retail. So I would propose to everybody on this call, and those of you who have been real estate investors, to consider this. If you have to pay these kinds of prices for properties, is this enough profit for you? Is this enough for you to cover your risk and pay yourself for all your hard work? And I think I'm going to hear a very concerted no from the background, because this is not a business model that anybody can scale. Well, then where are the good deals? What's going on behind the scenes, and where is the smart money going today? Well, here is a newspaper called National Mortgage News, and you can get this online. Very, very active in the distressed mortgage assets business reporting. And they reported, this is just one story, First Financial Network, which is a kind of an intermediary of distressed assets. They announced an $85 million loan sale. Now, this was just this one day in January 2013. I hear news like this on a weekly basis. Did you know that FHA announced it will sell at least 20,000 notes to investors every year for the next 10 years? That Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have been mandated to sell $400 billion in distressed notes within the next six years. And HUD has $400 billion in loans to sell over the next 6 years. That's a typo. Should be 400 billion. Sorry. This is an incredible amount of loans that have to be sold by these what are called government-sponsored entities. They call them GSEs. They've had to buy back these loans, and now they have to offload them. In fact, Congress has been pressuring them to sell these off because it's weighing down the general budget. These have to be sold, and who can buy them? People like you and me and us. So what is the market opportunity in NPNs? Well, we think that this is going to be about a 3 to 5 year opportunity. There's a very strong and good inventory right now, and the demand is good. The underwater loans are actually gaining equity, which is a good thing for a note buyer because your LTV is better all the time. There are loss share agreements expiring, which means there's more inventory to sell. And what that means is the FDIC, which we all know insures the deposits at the banks. FDIC puts some banks that are at risk of basically bankruptcy under an agreement that says you must sell these loans out of your portfolio that are not performing, and you have this long to do it, and they give them a certain window. Well, a lot of those loss share agreements were actually instituted a few years ago, and now they're maturing. So these banks are forced to sell, or the FDIC puts more pressure on them, and they can actually shut them down if they don't sell them off. There are many millionaires made from solving these problems in the market right now, and there is still room for you. If you get in soon before the prices are driven up by a diminishing supply. So this is not something you want to think about for the next 5 years before you really get in and do it. So what is a note? For those of you who are wondering, when a loan is offered by a bank, there are two instruments that are used to really make official that relationship between lender and borrower. And we use the promissory note and then a trustee or mortgage based on whatever state it's in. And you as a note holder can approach that lender and you can say, lender, I would like to buy that loan file. These two documents are in what we call the loan file. You can approach the bank, could be a hedge fund or a bank, and say, I would like to buy you out. Well, you make an agreement, you negotiate the price, and you now own that loan file, promissory note, trust deed, also other documents that are in there. And now the bank is completely out of the picture, and you own that note and that promissory note and that mortgage. Well, what do you do with it once you own it? Well, one thing you can do is you can sell it. You can buy a note cheaply, and then you sell it. There are people that would love to buy it. You can modify the loan, and this is a servicer, and someone asked whether it's okay for you as a note buyer to contact the borrower. We don't. We have a servicer do that for us. Brian would have to answer whether it's okay under IRA restrictions. I'm not quite sure. It's his expertise, but I know as a note buyer, we don't contact that homeowner, that borrower. We let the servicer do it because of RESPA laws. We're very careful about that, especially on a first lien. But once we have that loan modified, we can then sell it as a performing note. There's a huge market for this. People love getting regular cash flow, and you as a note buyer can add a lot of value to that note, getting it to re-perform again if that borrower can afford those payments. And you find that out by having the servicer call and make a deal. And you can also approve a short sale. What if the borrower wants to sell the house? Well, then you as a note holder, if you bought it for $20,000 on the note, and say for instance, and they would like you to discount it and say they owe you $100,000 and you can discount it down to $50,000. You only paid $20,000 for it, and you just made $30,000 if you approve the short sale. So this is a great strategy. You don't have to foreclose. You don't have to get a deed in lieu. You don't have to do a loan mod. You just agree to let them sell that house. And no, you don't only get $20,000, which you paid for the note. You get $50,000 if you can get them to agree to it. Because remember, they owe you $100,000. And yes, I know you bought it at 20%. Well, that's not unheard of as a note buyer. And then the last two is you can agree to a deed in lieu. That's where instead of you foreclosing, you accept the house. You get the deed to the house. You can then resell it, or you can rent it out, whatever you choose to do. And then last but not least, and we put it last because we don't like to do it, but we will if we have to, we foreclose. And there are times you just need to move those borrowers down the road to something that they can afford, and we will do that if we have to. And we do that on a regular basis. Now, let me give you a few examples of these strategies that are actually in our portfolio, in our fund. This was a house that, the note that we bought in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. It was vacant. We were able to get the deed in lieu. The person did not want to keep the house. They wanted to just give us the deed instead of foreclosure. And as is value was $25,000 for the house. You know, those of you in California say, how can someone, you know, how can a house be worth $25,000? That's what they're worth in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. But the unpaid principal balance was almost $67,000. See, because when they bought it, they probably took out a $70,000 loan. So what can you do with that? Well, we paid only $7,500 for that note. We had to make up the back taxes, all in $10,000. And so of the current value, we had to pay 41% of the current value. So that $10,204 is 41% of the current as-is value of that property. And then what were we able to do? At that point, we got the deed in lieu, listed it for $29,900. Couldn't quite get that, got $24,000 for it. Closing costs are here, and the fees, which turns into a profit of about $10,000 and ROI of 136. Okay, so there's one example of a deed in lieu. And you can see the time period here goes from 9/12 to 3/13, about 6 months. So you have to keep that into account. But if you get a bunch of these in your portfolio, they just sort of, you know, have a way of moving through your pipeline, and they sort of pop with profit after a period of few months here. It's really exciting. So here's another one. This is one that our team is real excited about. This is turning into a short sale approval. Turned out it was vacant. The owner just wanted to sell it. So instead of having to pay for foreclosure or deed in lieu or all the legal costs, we just said, sure, we'll short the note that we bought. The BPO estimate on it for right now, present value, is $25,000. Again, the owner, borrower, owed about $70,000 on it. We bought the note for $11,000. Our all-in was $11,000 more or less. That's 46% of present value. So you compare the $11,000 to the $25,000. That's about a 46% of what we paid of the BPO value. And then on the short sale, we've already got 2 offers at $30,000. Our fees about $2,500 with all in. So that one's just about sold now. And that would equate to about $16,000 in profit and a nice return. Now this is my last of the 3 here examples, case studies. This one was an occupied property. We always have to give the people the option of staying in a property if they so choose. The current as-is was $33,000, unpaid principal balance about $70,000. We purchased this note for $11,000, and that's about, again, 33% of value. They wanted to stay in the property, so we modified the loan. The monthly payment is $336. Our yearly income is about $3,700. And so if we resell this note, we can perhaps have about $58,000 profit on this, because what this is talking about is if we take this to full term over the course of time, we're going to be able to make this amount if the loan just stays modified and they continue to pay their payments. So this is a long-term reperforming play. You can also then turn around and sell this loan and just get it as a lump of cash. Those are 3 examples of things you can do with notes. So if you're a property investor right now having rental property, I'm going to propose to you, how would you like this? How would you like to have a lot of modified loans nationwide? They're paying you every month. You don't have tenants or toilets. You don't have calls in the middle of the night. You just have all these modified loans paying you, processed through a servicing company. A lot easier than having property management. What are the states we like? Well, we like Indianapolis. It's one of the hardest hit states, and we can go into that. I'll tell you about my website. You can learn about that. We like Columbus, Ohio. We like Texas because they have fast foreclosure timelines there. Somebody told me that everything's fast in Texas. They have an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit, and they also have fast foreclosures. Florida, we like that because we like Florida because of the strong rentals, and a lot of people want to buy, especially South Florida. We like Metro California really mostly for seconds and rehab loans. California is really too expensive for firsts, and also our laws here are not very favorable to first buyers. Here are some price points, kind of as a little bonus for you guys. How much should you pay for notes based on BPO? Okay, remember that's based on BPO. California and the western states, you shouldn't pay any more than 75% of the BPO price of the house. And you can just see the other values here. I'll let you either copy those down or you can watch the replay that will be sent out. And don't go above these prices, okay? Don't let somebody make you pay more than these because, you know, as you always hear with real estate, you make your money when you buy. It's the same thing that's true in notes. So here's some tips on buying notes. You always want to confirm the value by having an agent drive by once the note sale is approved. You want to use the crime map on Trulia, find out what that crime statistic is. You want to review the collateral file, that means the loan file, make sure all the documents are there that you need or they're guaranteeing that they're there, and if they aren't, that you can get a refund. I'll review the credit report if you're buying a junior lien, if it's a second, and I have videos I can show you more information about that on my website. You want to make sure that you call the municipality and find out about taxes or other liens on that property so you know what your all-in costs will be. Always collaborate with other note investors. This world is very rich with people who have great information, very willing to share, and always make sure that you collaborate. Avoid broker daisy chains. If you have a broker trying to get a commission, beware of that. And always do what you say because people want to count on you, especially the sellers. How to cut your risks. Don't overpay for notes. Make sure you outsource to build your scale. Don't contact homeowners yourself because you have to follow RESPA laws, which are very strict. Carefully choose where you buy. Pick your rehabbers carefully. That's for rehab loans. Make sure you get enough due diligence time. Don't let somebody hurry you. Follow through on what you promise. And as I said before, include right to exchange language in the note sale agreement so that you can get it back. Where to find deals? You can find deals on FCI Exchange. You can buy from hedge funds like Granite, and actually our fund sells as well. Attend conferences. You'll find people at the Noteworthy conference, and usually in October, November in Las Vegas. Also Paper Source. You can look them up on the internet. You'll find them. They have conferences. Partner with experienced note investors to find deals. You can also call servicing companies, for example, FCI, and they sometimes have notes to sell. And others like BSI Financial and Land Home is another one. LinkedIn groups, look for distressed assets in the LinkedIn groups. You can look, go to banks, call banks and use a company called laneguide.com. Laneguide has assets listed, banks listed that sell assets. And you can also go to reputable note buyers. So here's what you learned. We're almost done. 2 timely investment strategies for today's real estate market. You learned about rehab lending and non-performing notes. I showed you the advantage of paper over property, and I showed you what the smart money is doing today. And I showed you how we manage risk while maximizing our profit. I showed you 5 profitable workout strategies with notes. And I didn't really talk about profiting from the need of seller finance REOs. I'll have to cover that in a future video for you. It's just too much for this shorter version here. We need a part 2. And then where we're investing and why. And I showed you some case study highlights. And then I think we'll have some time for Q&A here in just a second. Now, for all of you on this call, we usually don't do this because we get so many inquiries, but we are willing to do this because this is a very specialized group. I mean, all of you guys that are connected with Brian Davis and with AccuPlan, we know that you are serious investors. And so we're very willing to spend some extra time with you and give you that attention that you need and deserve. So we are offering you a free follow-up question and answer session about notes, and you will also get some bonus due diligence process, what I call cheat sheets. These will show you how we do our due diligence on firsts and seconds. These are presented to you as an infographic. You can put right up on your wall. I've gotten really good reviews for them, and you will get that free when you sign up for this question and answer time. The question and answer time is going to be next Wednesday, same day, next Wednesday, a week from today at 11:30, same time. And all you have to do is go to realestatenoteInvestor.com/AccuPlan, and we're going to offer you a free 15-minute deal analysis for the first 10 people who sign up. We can only offer that to the first 10 because we're busy, and we're just being honest. But we would be very willing to do that for the first 10. And then if you like to ask a question, then all you have to do is just email us at info@inspiredcapitalpartners.com, and your questions would be note-related, not really IRAs. If you want to have an IRA question, of course, contact Brian Davis. But these questions are going to be then compiled, and we will answer these questions in this live call, which is, again, next Wednesday. All you have to do is go to realestatenoteinvestor.com/AccuPlan to sign up. So I'm going to leave that up there so you guys can write down that URL. And I will now just kind of pause, see if Brian Davis wants to say anything, and go from there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Brian and Kylie. I appreciate it. I learn a little bit more every time that I listen about non-performing notes, and looking forward to hearing more from you. We have a few questions right now that I think we can both answer, and hopefully won't take too much time, and then obviously you'll still have time next week. But what happens in the event of a borrower who fails to pay when due? Who takes the legal action against the borrower, and who pays the legal fees?
All right, very good. So this would be a case where this loan was modified. You go out, you buy a note, you have the servicer modify the loan with the borrower. They have qualified for that loan. All right, so we don't re-qualify them unless they can afford the payments. So for some reason, this person has qualified for the loan, the loan payments have been modified, and then maybe they lose their job or something, and that happens, right? Well, as a note holder, you have more flexibility than if they were with the bank or something. So you actually can restructure that loan if you so choose. But if they cannot afford those payments, well, that house is too expensive for them. So you really need to then say to them, and you can have your servicer call them. You have the servicer call and say, you have missed your payments, and we need for you to tell us what you want to do. Why don't you just give us the deed? We won't foreclose. And if that fails, if they don't want to give you the deed, then you have to foreclose. And that's a reality of this business. But it's a win-win, because how would you feel if you were in a house that's too expensive for you, and every month you can't pay it? It's just, this is a negative experience for these borrowers. They need a place they can afford. So they need to move on to another place.
All right. Here's another question which you answered already, so I'll just spell it out here. Do you guys have notes available for sale?
We are always in the process of buying notes, filling our portfolio. Yes, we do. They're in various stages of the process. Some have already had deed in lieu promised. Others we are foreclosing on. Others are going through short sale. The answer is yes, and they're in various stages. So absolutely. And we will actually sell notes too. We can sell it in any form, from anything from a note to an REO.
Oh, great. And I got this question earlier, but it sounds like you helped answer it. It says, I know there are restrictions when buying a house with an IRA. You cannot do any of the physical work. What are the restrictions on notes? Can we contact the borrower to see if they'll make the payments? And Brian Netzel, referred to this earlier in his presentation. You want to follow the rest of the law. So if you're the IRA owner, it's the same thing if it was you individually. Your best bet here is to have a third-party service be involved. And is that kind of your take on it, Brian?
I would say yes, for two reasons. One is RESPA, and the second reason is something we call outsourcing. Because if you want to be a person who owns more than one note in your portfolio, if you are serious about this, you really want to ramp this up, you have to start hiring people to do your servicing, because there are too many little pieces. And I'll tell you that these companies who do the servicing, they do something they call right party contact. They have very sophisticated computer systems that call the person to try to make contact. Sometimes it takes them a month to make contact. So I personally don't want to be on the phone using all my time up trying to get a hold of this person. I'd rather have them use their sophisticated phone calling system to find that person. But you as a CEO, you direct them in how you want them to do this. Do you want them to get a short sale? Do you want them to first try to get, do that, or are you willing to do a deed in lieu? You always want to offer a loan mod because the rest of the law is required, especially under HAMP, you're required to offer a loan mod. But the fact is that if they can't afford it, you're not required to approve a loan mod. So in all these scenarios, it gets a little complicated. You want to have somebody that you hire, and in the scheme of things, it's not that expensive to hire a servicer to do this because this business is very profitable.
Right. People ask if they can get a copy of the recording. If people email me, I'll be more than happy to provide a copy of my PowerPoint, as well as I am recording this presentation, so I should have a link for people to watch it at their convenience later.
Right.
I don't know if this question is directed to me or you, Brian Netzel. It says, hey, Brian, how can we use your clients for private money for our non-performing notes investing? And if it's directed to me, again, I'm not a financial advisor or planner. I can't advise any investments for clients. I can show them how to do it, and I do a lot of these educational seminars to do so. But if that's directed at you, Brian, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I think that one's for you.
Okay, I kind of think so too. But both of us being a Brian. Here, what are the requirements to qualify the owner for a loan mod? So that would definitely be directed at you.
Okay. Very good question, and the answer is it's the same requirements that would be for any person going in to try to get a new loan with the bank. They have to fill out a 1003 loan application. They have to qualify with their credit, with their full employment or their income. They have to, just like a regular loan, and you as a note holder can actually be flexible. You don't have to be as rigid as you would as say like a Chase Bank or something like that. But the main thing is, can they afford that house? And if they can't afford that house, if they don't qualify under a certain income to credit ratio that you have as a note holder, then they don't qualify for the loan, and you don't have to modify. So, because as a note holder, you have rights. You have a right to get paid. You paid money for this note, and this is not a charity. And so they have to qualify just like they would if they were applying for a loan through you.
All right.
Hey, Brian, one other thing I'll pitch in on that is it also depends on what your strategy is to do with that note. If you plan on holding it yourself for a full term, then usually you're a little bit maybe more flexible and not so stringent on credit and income ratios and that. But if you plan on selling that note off to another third party in secondary market, you want to know what the group that you're selling that note off to, what their requirements are to accept any loans that you're actually modifying.
That's such an excellent point. You're so right. And there's such a market for reperforming loans out there in the market. Yeah, Kylie's right.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of the middle of their day to listen to Brian, Kylie, and myself talk about self-directed IRAs and non-performing notes. Kylie and Brian, I want to thank you guys for joining me today on the call and providing our listeners a great education on non-performing notes.
Great, and I really should have said it at the beginning, Brian Davis, I really appreciate you and the fact that our team is getting to know you better all the time, and it's a great opportunity to work with you. A person who really is open to notes, as Brian is a great resource for people who have IRAs, because not that many IRA administrators understand notes or are interested in notes, and so he's a great resource for you guys on this call. Because, frankly, most IRA admins know a lot about property investing with an IRA, but they know literally nothing about note investing. And the fact that he invited us and he's investing, in notes himself is testimony to the fact that he's a great resource for you guys on this call.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, and I'll be available at briandavis@accuplan.net if anybody wants a recording of this or if anybody has questions. So with that, thanks everybody for being on the call, and hope to work with all of you in the future.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.